Ladies and gentlemen, men and women, welcome back to another episode of Bad Catholic Dads. I am here with John Perez. John, how you doing?
Heyo. Hey, how's it going?
Good. Oh, it's great. And I'm here as well, Derek Rogers. We're here with episode 19 episodes and counting. I think it's going to be an upcoming 19. TLC show, right? Instead of the 19 Kids Accounting, we have 19 episodes and counting. We're going to be covering an episode called Family TV.
I don't know. That's like title pending. How's title pending? I don't know if that's a title.
Yeah, title pending. You and I, we've been a little bit busy and crazy.
Man.
We apologize in advance for this later release, but it just we looked at it and we're like, nah, we have to wait a little bit here.
Yeah, no.
So this the title is pending, I guess, for this episode. But we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, sure.
So John, how's everything going for you?
Oh, it's been crazy. Yeah. We were in Pittsburgh the past weekend for baptism for some of our best friends, and no, that was good. I'm glad we're doing this episode because on the way home yesterday, my kids, like, I don't know what happened. They were so good. They were sleeping, and all of a sudden one woke up and just like went crazy and just started crying. The other one got woken up because of that. And I finally realized why parents have like those DVD players in the car, like on the seats, or the iPads on the seats, attached to the seats. And I'm like, that makes a lot of sense now, you know? Man. But yeah, no, it was crazy. It was good. We got back home like 8:30, 8:45, 9, almost 9. And we were wiped by then. So yeah.
To me, it's so draining, man. When you have kids in the car crying like that, I always think back to like The Princess Bride when he's having the ears sucked out of him when he's attached to the table. And it's like the most draining thing where it's like, you're stuck in this car with these kids crying, and it's like you kind of get used to it, and then it just kind of puts you in this weird mood because, you know, biologically we're hooked up so we can be like, that baby's crying, it needs me. So you're going against like what you're naturally inclined to do, and it's difficult, man. There's like that sound of that baby, like the dissonance on its cry. It's so tough. And
right.
I will say, like, having those DVD players for our rides up to New York, like, they're magical, and they don't cost that much. I would look into that other than an iPad, because we always buy the Blu-ray DVD combos for any movie that we know we're gonna have. That way we can have the DVD one is our travel thing.
Yeah, we have some old iPads laying around that we don't even use anymore.
Oh, see, okay, good.
So we might just hook those up, like get those like you can insert them and then hang them on the back of the car seats or whatever. So we might do that. Like, but yeah, no, like totally understand. It was rough because. After like what you were saying is like so my wife and I are in the front seats and they're in the back seats, and we didn't take our car this past weekend. We took my mother-in-law's car because she was like, why don't you just use my car? I need some mileage on it because it's kind of brand new. So we're like, okay, sure, but it's a little bit. So our car's kind of a huge SUV. You've seen it, right?
Yep.
But her car is not quite an SUV. It's like a crossover, if you know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. It's like in between a car and in between a SUV. So there was no space to sit in the middle. Usually one of us will sit in the middle of them.
Which is ideal.
Which is ideal because you could just like pat them or like, you know, tell them it's okay. But for us yesterday, we were like both in the front seats, and so they're crying for like probably a good hour straight. And it was just like, I feel so bad, but at the same time, like, we're getting a little irritated because, like, we wanted to stop. Absolutely. And it was just kind of crazy. And I'm just like, and I know that, like, maybe the DVDs, like, aren't the answer, but they certainly help because I put on my son's, like, favorite YouTube video, and he was, like, just watching it. But I can only like stretch my arms so far back there, like for that long. So at a certain point, I was like, "I'm sorry, James, I have to give up." Like, and then boom, it started all over again. So, man, it was crazy.
Right, it's the struggle of every parent. Like, is this okay? I'm like indoctrinating my children with movies, but like for us, I mean, driving down to Florida when we took that trip, man, that's like a lot of time, and it was just a world's difference when I knew my kids were like watching, like they watched Matilda on like the way down,
nice.
And you know they watched like just all these different like kind of Pixar movies, and it was so peaceful. And we have the van, which helps, but one of us would like go to the back if something was really needed. But other than that, like my daughter was old enough. She's such a blessing. Kateria is old enough to operate the DVD thing by herself, which we don't have to jump back there. So we'd have the thing near her, and she'd put it in, and she'd kind of help with leadership in the back.
That's
like,
awesome.
You know, keeping it quiet. But
definitely.
it's an interesting thing because I mean, as kids, when I was growing up, I never had the TV thing in the back of our car. We had a TV in our van, like up near the front, and it was a VHS thing, and we would use that from time to time. But for the most part, it was like listening to a good old like Walkman, or like, you try to read, and I'd get motion sickness in the car. I didn't have handheld games to really pass the time either.
Yeah.
And it's tough. So next trip, do you think you're going to do that?
Oh, no. Yeah, we've learned. Like, it's, parenthood is such like, parenthood is such a trial by fire. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, what works and what doesn't work. And you kind of just learn things the hard way, most of the time when you're a parent, especially when you're a new parent. My wife and I aren't, we don't have like years and years of parenthood under our belts. We're still fairly new, only 2 years really. But yeah, no, we're definitely doing that next time, because that just like even like just to kind of just help them out, or help my son out, especially, because he's the one who woke up my daughter. So I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. When they all get rolling, man, that's like one of the most difficult things. Like, it's like, oh my goodness.
It's so funny. Like, when all of them have meltdowns, it's like at the same time, they're I don't know if they're planning it, but when it happens, you just like, you either kind of just like look at each other and just kind of like, my wife and I just kind of chuckle, and we're just like, all right, man, we're in it. We're in it.
And our listeners know from previous episodes that you and I definitely have our frustrations in the car when you're just dealing with normal drivers. Like when you add that variation of a child screaming, it just ups the intensity of your emotions at that time. And I mean, I remember clearly driving home the one time to be present with our family up in New York around Christmas time, and our one. I think it was Avila was just crying so much that she ended up throwing up, like, because she was so worked up.
I hate that.
And it was like we had to stop at that point to clean up, but it was like a good thing where it kind of made me rethink, like, oh, man, I was really upset in the car, and it was like this restart of like, am I being a bad father by feeling upset in that situation? And it's a tough situation because you get mad and then you have to ask, you're trying to get forgiveness for yourself because you're like, man,
it's tough.
Really angry.
It's so tough, and part of it's like just. You can't help. You feel like you can't help but feel that way too sometimes. It's like I don't have enough discipline to not be like irritated by that. I don't know many parents that do, but no, it's tough. It's definitely a tough situation.
So I mean, that kind of transitions into like this whole. Is TV an evil or a necessity in our lives? And like this can be taken outside of the car situation, because. I mean, I know that there's people like, no, I want my family to interact. I don't want to have TVs in the car at all when they're driving. And to a certain degree, like, that's understandable. We wouldn't put on something when we're traveling to church or something like that, And like generally when we're going to church, we always start with our like morning prayer and we go. And that's kind of, we're not like, okay, let's turn on DVD because we're really close. But when you're talking about a trip to Pittsburgh, Florida, New York, I feel like you need that distraction. But the question is, what is your thoughts about like TV in general as an evil or necessity? And to start that off, I want to just ask, like, what was it like growing up in your house with like TV? What was your family's rules and stances on TV usage?
No, that's a great question. Before we start, actually, I want to say that I'm excited for this episode because I like I said, I'm still fairly a new parent, so I'm excited to hear Derek's side of this because you've been doing this for a lot longer than I have. And also, if we get anything wrong, please let us know, but also just letting the listeners know this is kind of our opinions, and what we've experienced and what works for us, not necessarily what works for every single parent. You know what I mean? So just kind of want to put that disclaimer out there for this episode. I don't know. This episode might be a more of a controversial one, but just want to put that. I don't know how you feel about that. This topic.
I agree that it could be something, because things are going to work for certain families, and you have different viewpoints that you've been raised on. So you're going to feel more passionate one way or the other.
Sure.
And I think people are going to be good enough to realize that, hey, like, these are their opinions. They're bad Catholic dads. They're not the best Catholic dads.
Sure.
But maybe this is a discussion that we can have with our listeners and everything like that.
Definitely. So growing up, I felt like I was in the age where, I was a 90s kid growing up. I was born in the 80s, but like, right at the tail end there. But being a 90s kid, I felt like I was pretty exposed to television. Television was starting to pick up steam. It's not anything like it is nowadays with, streaming and everything.
Sure.
It's not as accessible as it is nowadays. But when I was younger, I was watching like, Power Rangers and Teenage Mutant Turtles and X-Men and just a bunch of cartoons. And anime and all those things growing up. So TV, I felt like when I think of my childhood, I think of a lot of television, actually, probably more than I should have. And my parents did do a great job of kind of limiting me, which now I understand why they did that. As a kid, you're like, no, I want to keep watching or whatever. And hopefully our kids will understand that. But yeah, no, I feel like I was exposed to a lot of TV growing up, especially sports. Like sports, like my dad was huge into sports. He would always have sports on. And so just being exposed to kind of that, and just like, I don't know if parents like realize, but they'll have something on and they'll unconsciously expose their kids to it. You know what I mean? Like, if that makes sense.
So what was the rules in your house? Like, what did you like?
Well, definitely homework first. Like always, the one thing I remember is always homework before TV. And so my show would come on at 4:30 every day, and I'd come on like 3. And so I knew I had to get my homework done before that. So no, it was definitely homework. And then I really don't remember. It's been so long, right? But I don't know if my parents put like after the homework was done. I don't know if they put like a limit on it. I mean, definitely. When it was bedtime at in the Perez household. But no, from till like 4:30 until like pretty much dinner. I think I was good. Like me and my brothers were good. So
did you watch any shows as a family together? Like, was there a special family show where you were like, oh, come on guys, let's watch it. This is it.
Well, I don't know. That's a good question. I definitely sports. Like, because my dad and I share a lot of the same sports teams.
Would your mom be on board with TV stuff? Like, would she ever watch stuff with you?
Well, my mom, when we were younger, really watched sports with us. It was super interesting.
Oh.
I don't know if she did it just because of my dad. She probably did, but when we were younger, she definitely did watch sports with us. I think as we grew older, she stopped watching sports because like my dad had that person to watch sports with. So she was like, all right, you've taken my place.
Your mom.
Well, I think she wanted us to replace her, by the way.
This is about time. Yeah.
But no, we would watch like a lot of reality TV together. So like Fear Factor, it was a huge show. Okay. I don't know, was that 2000s or that like late 90s? I can't remember.
I never watched that much.
We would
that was
watch
always a little bit risque for our family.
Yeah, we would watch American Idol when it right when it first started. But no, I don't think we had like, okay, like it's this time of week. Let's watch this show together. This is our family show. We would more of just, hey, something's on. The family's kind of sitting. I'll just sit down and watch TV with my mom and dad.
So did you have a TV in your room growing up?
My parents never let me have a TV in my room growing up.
Which is probably better.
And I understand. Like I finally, it's funny when you become a parent, you just understand why these things.
They're not big idiots like you thought they were.
No, like they're not even mean like I thought they were. Totally reasonable. But no, I didn't have a TV growing up. Like when I was little. But as I got into like teenagehood. And my parents saw that I was mature enough to have a TV in my room. They let me have a TV in my room. So
yeah,
especially with the video games, I was like, Dad, Mom, sorry, video games are here. I mean, we're doing this, okay? But they wouldn't let me have cable in my room. Let's just say that for sure. Yeah, they did not let me have cable.
Yeah, exactly. Same with us. Like, so for me, growing up as a kid, when the school days were there, like, because I went to Catholic school till 3rd or 4th grade, and I always remember like. They let me watch TV in the early morning. Like when I woke up, I got dressed, I got my uniform on and waiting for the bus. Like it was like Alvin and the Chipmunks, man. That's all I remember being on in the early morning. And then it was off to school. And same thing where it was like, I wanted to get my homework done on the bus and I got motion sickness so much because I couldn't do it on the bus. Reading, I can't do that while we're driving.
Dude. I think I've gotten better about it, but yeah, no, I can't do that.
I don't even try anymore because I'm afraid of getting that.
Yeah, anyways, same here. It's the worst.
The main thing was to get to see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, man. That was like the show. And the other one was Dino Riders, but that was on Sundays at the same exact time we were at church. And I never got to see it, so we got the VHS tape to watch that stuff. But for my family, like growing up, it was, we had the one TV downstairs and, again, Buffalo Bills, the football games. My parents wouldn't let us watch The Simpsons or anything like that. Like that was just, there was a lot of restrictions for that. They had the Disney Channel, which was cool. So we'd watch like some stuff like together, and we would watch movies. And then like when we had moved when I was younger, we didn't have cable. We had just a satellite signal, just like the old antenna, and all we could get was Canadian stations. So we watched like a lot of like like just some like PBS stuff and just educational TV. And then we would watch shows like Green Acres together because my parents love that. We would they'd get those awesome deals with VHS tapes, and you'd get a ton of them and you can just watch them. So we watched a lot of VHS tapes. We would rent them from the library because you just grow sick of Canadian stations and French people speaking all the time. So that was
awesome.
And it was a lot of family stuff. Like we would watch Survivor together. That was our show that we would watch together as a family. And just little other shows here and there. America's Funniest Home Videos. That was something that we always did.
Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune. Yeah.
See, we weren't that smart. Like our attention span was really bad, so we didn't really participate in that. It would always have to be like, oh, look, a guy is getting kicked in the crotch. That's hilarious.
I had to shout those. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Three Stooges was the other thing that was huge.
Yeah, I had to shout out Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, because my wife, that was her family show. Like she definitely like every single night, 7 p.m. She would sit down with her family and sit and watch those shows, and she still does it to this day, which is kind of cool.
See, and life imitates art. Look at how smart your wife is too to this day. Man. So like it really
sure, yeah, she's
and then we were able to get a TV like once we hit our later like teenage years. They let us have like a TV in our room with the four brothers in the one room, so we would play video games in there. Yep. We wouldn't have any hookup with that stuff, but it was video games with all the brothers together. Yep. So now what is the TV consumption like now? Do you see a reflection of what it was before, or is there like changes? Because it's amazing, right? When you get in control of your own life, you're like, I could do whatever I want.
No, I can't do whatever. No, I'm kidding. You know what? If that was true, man, that would be awesome. But no, definitely not. It's. I feel like it's different nowadays. I feel like technology has advanced so far since like 90s, 2000s, early 2000s. Where just TV is different nowadays, like especially with, I think streaming has totally changed the game in terms of just watching TV. Like people don't even need these television sets anymore. It's all like you can watch on your iPad, or you can watch on your iPhone, or you can watch, on your PlayStation or whatever, So it's a lot different. So for us, TV, it's funny. We don't really watch TV together. We watch shows together, or we watch like a series together. But I mean, I think that's what I would say. Yeah.
Well, you're absolutely right. Where you don't need like the cable like you had, because you're right. The internet is taking, and then we're really trying to go. We're cutting the cord in December.
Do it.
Because we have our setup right now is we have a deal with Verizon. We have the DVR, and we have it, and it's not a bad deal. We have it, coupled in with the internet and everything, but the DVR was such an amazing thing. Like when Bethany and I were first married too, because with our jobs, there'd be shows that we'd want to watch, and we're like, you can record it, which was really nice because we were doing the old VHS way, of like setting the timer.
Oh, wow.
And it was such a difficult thing because Bethany and I were broke when we first got married, and it was like, we want to see the show. And it was like, it was kind of like setting up the incredible machine, like a big mousetrap, to make sure that the VHS would record it while we were away.
Sure.
And now it's just so easy. Like it's just the computer software in these DVR machines. Incredible. And so that's what we do like with our kids. And it's a little different for you right now because our kids like watching Paw Patrol and Elena of Avalor and like all these different shows where we can, and Peppa Pig and all that stuff. So we would record it and we would have it, like, because for us, the TV consumption, it's a lifesaver a little bit for us with the way Bethany's and my jobs are, where it is, we don't have an exact schedule because there's always a variation with doing youth ministry.
Right.
And so there might be a time where we need to take a call or do something and the other one is at work or something. So it's like, hey, do you guys want to watch a show, like real quick here? And so it's become somewhat, and I guess a negative way, part of like a babysitter for certain times where it's like, I need to take this call for work, or I need to do this. And, here's something that we've recorded. So like our consumption for our kids, and we've talked about this before, we're going through all of our DVDs and we're like, let's get rid of some of these because we don't watch these. And we might just become a family, kind of mirroring what happened to us with my family. It's like we'd buy those VHSs and we'd watch some of those because we didn't have great TV selection. So like we're thinking of going back to that thing where it's like, we're going to start watching less TV. And now that our kids can play, that's the thing, the transition, our kids are getting big enough where they love going outside now, and where we trust, like I don't have to walk them down the stairs anymore. Like they can walk down the stairs themselves. So now it's like, okay, mom or dad has to take a call, go outside, play in the backyard, and that has changed. So our viewpoints as parents has evolved because now our children can do stuff on their own, and we're going to be taking the TV slowly out of that. So cutting the cord in December and just having like the internet stuff to do certain things of like, maybe there is like an episode of Peppa Pig. You can find that right on there, or, all that stuff. So that's what our consumption now is like. The shows that we watch, like Bethany and I, Bethany loves like the TLC station, and she loves the what is it, Better Home and Gardens kind of stuff, where you have the Property Brothers and those kind of shows. And, we watch our Survivor together, but we don't watch as many of those TV shows like as normal. So that's what ours is right now. Like, it's a higher end of TV consumption, but it's also starting to drop down, especially now in the summer months where my kids are just outside getting eaten by mosquitoes, but having a great time while that's happening. So that's my, and going into it, do you see it as a parent? Like, do you use it right now with James? I know he's at a younger age. You mentioned how that YouTube video that he loved kind of calmed him down. Is like any of your watching as a TV, like family kind of thing, is that, does that come into play at all, like with you and your parenting?
Man, it's interesting because the hardest part is just, like you said, it's like, I feel like the TV in today's culture has become like, a babysitter of some sorts, and it's hard because as a parent, especially as a Catholic parent, as a parent who wants to be, engaged and involved, it's tough because for us, we've had the problem of just like, when do we show, these videos to calm him down, or when do we show these videos to keep him busy, and when do we, when do we come in, and when do we be engaged and involved and stuff like that. And so we've had like difficult conversations of just, all right, he's like crying right now, like nothing's helping, like do we put this video on? And so for us, like, I don't know, it's tough because as he's getting older, I can see on and I'm just like, I don't want you to get used to that, I don't want you to hello?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, hold on. Yeah, we're good. I just want to make sure it's still recording. Yeah, and so like we find ourselves just putting it on putting on his YouTube, like he just watches YouTube videos for now. He's not like, I mean, he'll watch like his show that he likes to watch is like Mickey Mouse Clubhouse.
Yeah.
So he'll like that show.
Hot diggity dog.
Yep. Yeah. So he'll like that show. But now we find it difficult, in terms of just like, when do we play and when do we not play?
Yeah. My kids too, they love the YouTube videos and if I think they have a choice, they might pick those because they love those kid toy review stuff.
Oh,
they love that. And they'll watch it, like both of them together. Like if Bethany needs to do something with Isaac right now or Blaze, and like if we're transitioning for something, she'll put on one of those toy review videos and they love it. And part of it is marketing. They're doing a fantastic job. Yesterday I went to Toys R Us with my, the three kids, and they like knew the names of all the toys in the aisles. They're like, oh, that's the chubby puppies. And like, that's
oh my gosh,
this and that. I'm like, how do you know that? And then I'm like, is it the YouTube videos? And they're like, yeah, we saw it on the, I was like, oh my gosh, the advertising has gotten them.
Oh.
So it's making me, and you're right about the babysitter. You've seen Cable Guy? Have you seen that movie? Jim Carrey.
I feel like yes. Is that
there's a great line at the end. He said somebody has to kill the babysitter.
Okay.
And he he tries to destroy the satellite feed that's going on, and because he's a kid that grew up on all this TV stuff, and he knows it's made him like increasingly difficult with like just dealing with people, and so he was trying to get rid of that so other people didn't turn out like him. I mean, in some ways that's how I see it. So like what. So what do you like or hate about, like, there's got to be a balance of this, right? Like there's got to be things that you hate about these things, and we've touched on it, and there's got to be things that are really helpful. Do you want to elaborate any more on like the things that you do like about like the television as a family, and things that you hate about it?
I mean, what I like about it is just instant gratification in terms of just, it keeps my son busy when something's really important, like whenever I have to take a call or whenever I have to, do this meeting on a phone real quick or something like that. It's just like I'll put it on, and it'll be, or when I have to cook, you know what I mean? When it's just me and the kids. So like anything I need help with or to do something, and when it's just myself and my wife's out of the house, I do like that. I do like that aspect of it. And it's not like I'm showing my kid, trashy videos or anything like that. We try to show him, educational videos as much as we can. Like the Bob the Train videos, it's all about counting numbers and alphabet and shapes and colors and stuff like that. So we're like, all right, that's fine. I like that part of it. I like that as a family, when my wife and I get to spend time with each other, a lot of families like to spend time with each other, doing a lot of different things, and we do too. We like going out and going to the park or going to some festival or something like that. But a lot of the times my wife and I will bond over a TV show, and we'll talk about it, and we'll have conversations about things that are based on television shows. But also the flip side of that is the one thing I hate, I don't know if hate's the right word, but the one thing I don't like about it is just how much accessible it is nowadays, how easy it is to just get on something and watch something and be waste time with it, and I'm kind of guilty of it. There are days where I'll like not anymore, but when I was younger, there'll be days where I'll just watch like a show the entire day and hey, there goes my day. I'm looking at you, Stranger Things. But yeah, no, like, and again, we've touched on it before, but it's tough. Our kids are they're in the stage of their lives where, they are what they see. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they consume. Yeah.
Yeah, they are what they consume, right? We are what we consume, and I'm someone who's like still a young parent, so I'm looking to like you, and I'm looking to other dads, and I'm looking to other families, just like what's the balance of like how much TV is too much TV, or not even too much TV. Is just like you can watch a 5-minute video and be totally changed and totally inspired by it, or you can watch like a trashy video and be totally changed and totally exposed to it. Because I've seen so many videos like where I'm watching a video and I'm like, all right, it's calling me to action, like I'm cool, and it's not even like a 30-minute video or a 30-minute show. So yeah, I look to you. Like, what do you like and hate about it?
So like the one thing that helps a lot, and I think my wife can attest to this too, is that for our kids at least, we can be like towards the end of the day, we'll have had bath time, we'll have had dinner, and it's like, okay, everybody, you clean up your stuff and we'll let you watch like one of the half-hour, 20-minute shows that we have on DVR. And so using it as that kind of, carrot of, just saying like, look, you do this, you can get rewarded. That's helped us a lot, because they'll be like, oh, I want to watch that show. And as a parent, that's helped tremendously. And it gives them some motivation of like, okay, if we work, we get this reward because this is something we really like.
Sure.
And, the thing I also like about it too is that sometimes, and you've had this as a parent, I think a lot of people had it, you'll have an end of a day where you're just like, I am so beat. Like it was a long day. Like you can either, like at the end of the day, like, look, let's throw on Moana and you guys watch it. I'm just going to lay on the couch. I'll snuggle with you kids. And like, we can watch it. And that's always like a nice thing where it's just like, it's kind of something to just relax to. And the same thing for when you're a parent and you had a long day with your kids and you're just like, honey, let's just, what movie do you want to watch?
Yeah.
Let's see if there's something on demand where, it just came out instead of going to the theater, because it gets increasingly more difficult. You'd be like, let's, watch that new Life movie with Ryan Reynolds and Jake Gyllenhaal, and so those kind of things, like I really do like, where it is a very nice time. And just like you said too, to have deeper conversations about what we see on TV, whether it be relationships or how our Catholic identity plays into this. We just recently had a review of Wonder Woman and Spider-Man: Homecoming, where I like film and TV shows for that reason, because it could have us into a discussion. It also brings us out to other people that have seen similar shows, and we can have like a connection with them. Like, oh yeah, I watched that show. What did you think of this? I really like that. What I hate about it, like you said, the accessibility is there. There's increasingly more and more times where certain agendas seem to be getting pushed through TV and film.
Sure, yeah,
and,
no, definitely.
Just things that it's like, as Catholics, we don't agree with, and the problem is, I feel like we get lumped into a crowd that we don't agree with, just because if we watch a certain show, we're all of a sudden like, oh, well, you are doing all the wrong things in life. And I don't like that about some of the film and TV stuff. So I would say, yes, in moderation, it can help you as a parent with your kids. again, you shouldn't be like, if you're at church and your kids, I've seen this happen. I've seen people out in the vestibule where their kids were acting up and they allowed them to have the video, like they're watching on their dad's phone of something in the back of church. It's like, that shouldn't be happening, you know?
Yeah, sure.
But I understand, like, when you get to the end of the line and you're like, they're just bothering people in church. They can't, you know, like, this is better for everybody. It's hurting, I think, that child more, you know, like the attention should be on mass, even though they don't understand it. You're an example. Like, they're going to do the same thing for their kids too. Like you said, what you become what you consume. And those are the things that are just difficulties with parents. But then, you know, along those lines, which we'll probably start talking about now, there's certain shows as parents where you're not going to be watching with your kids. Sure. And I think that's the next topic that we want to jump into right here.
Real
right?
quick, I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
So I have this thing, and I'm sure like many dads, I just want to talk about I don't know, real quick. But I have this thing where I'm like, there are certain times where I just feel guilty, kind of like in terms of, like you were saying, like after a long day of work or just being at work or just having a tough time. I feel sometimes guilty putting on the television, because I feel like I should be spending time with my kids, and I sometimes feel, and at the moment, I sometimes, like, I don't feel selfish doing that, because I'm just like, I don't care. I just want to have like 5 minutes to myself or 10 minutes to myself, or, you know, an hour to myself, before I like have to put the kids to sleep, you know, dinner, bath, sleep, you know. So sometimes I kind of feel guilty, and I'm sure a lot of dads feel that way and a lot of parents feel that way. It's only looking back where I'm just like, am I too selfish sometimes in terms of like using this thing, using TV or using this video to, spend time with my kids rather than me spend time with the kids. Like in your experience, especially since you have older kids now and more kids, what is your experience with that? Like, have you ever felt I guess, been selfish, or have felt that way before, Derek?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's been times where it'd be like, guys, I'm just like, I need to do this right now. I can't have you like talking to me right now. And I think a lot of parents have had that situation.
Sure. Yeah, no, definitely.
And I do feel like guilty with that. And other times, like, I'm just thinking of like yesterday. I was so tired yesterday because I came back from that work camp stuff. I was like so beat. I had no voice. I was just drained. And I was like, I hadn't had time to spend time with my kids. I wanted to sleep. And there was that, you know, they're old enough now where they're going to start having memories of me as a dad, where you have kids when they're 2 and stuff, they're not going to remember some stuff. But now I have a daughter that's going to be able to tell stories about me. So I have to step up my game. So it's like, you know, I'm like, okay, guys, my daughter wanted to get roller skates and roller blades. And I'm like,
I saw that. That's awesome.
Let's go to Toys R Us. So I was tired. We all, you know, just the 3 kids and I went to Toys R Us, and then we came back, and then we went out to the park, you know, and we were doing all that stuff. And then we spent, and it helped me feel better, like to get outside and do that stuff. Even though I was run down, I felt like a good dad at that time.
Sure. Yeah, no.
And sometimes that does help when you push yourself past the limit and you see your kids having fun. And it's like, yeah, I want my kids to have these positive memories, you know, with their dad. And the same thing, like, I don't ever condone replacing prayer time with story time. I mean, you know, with TV time.
Sure. No,
and that's like the good thing. Like, again, last night I was completely exhausted at the end of the day. I actually took a nap at like 6 p.m. to like 8 p.m. And I never do that. And I felt guilty taking that time, but I needed that rest. But it was good to have that, still do prayer time after that and get the kids ready for bed. But that's going to happen, I think, a lot where it's that balance of like, am I going to be a good dad? I have to be a good employee as well, you know? And so what is this balance? And just point out to any dad is just like, the kids are going to start remembering you for something, you know, and what version is that going to be? Like, oh, dad really wasn't there for us.
Sure.
Or dad was being able to do stuff. So right now I have the level of difficulty is increased because my daughter can now start writing things. So she can keep a journal of how I was as a dad rather than just me relying on them forgetting. So yeah, I totally understand, John, too, like with just, you feel guilty sometimes with that, but you have a human body that gets tired.
Sure.
And as much as our soul tries to call out to God and just your family in general, you just sometimes you need that break. And I think it's that forgiveness. If you keep making it a pattern in your life, that's a problem. But I think every now and then it's okay. That moderation of giving yourself a little bit of time is good. And the same thing for dads, like try to be there for your wives or the moms too. Like, hey, honey, like let me watch the kids for a while. And that was the thing, like why I wanted to take the kids to Toys R Us too, is like my wife had been with the kids for the last 4 days really without me. And I wanted to give her a break too, because the same thing goes for her. She needs some time by herself to just kind of regain who she is, rather than she's always just a mom. She's more than just a mom.
Sure,
so, and I think
100%.
dads have to look at that at themselves too. Like I have to take time for me so I can be there stronger for my family.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Cool.
And so like, I think what we're in this next topic is, are these things bringing us closer or further away from God? And we're going to be talking more so on some of the movies or shows or even books that we like read as, married couples, or just dads in general. And recently a show came out.
Okay.
And you and I are fans of the show, but in this circle of that we have with, Catholics and our faith, there's always that thing of coming up of, hey, if you're watching this, it's really bad. And of course, which show are we talking about, John?
We're talking about, of course, the good old Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Man, it's so interesting to like, for me, I don't think I've ever been exposed. Like, I guess because like I never ran a Catholic podcast before. I was never in like, I guess quote unquote Catholic circles like this before. But it's interesting to like host a Catholic podcast and follow a bunch of Catholic people, follow all these Catholic media websites. And I mean, that just goes with the, when I ran this Catholic podcast, or when I decided to start this Catholic podcast, this Catholic brand, I decided to just like, okay, I want to be in the know. I want to know what people are talking about. I want to know what people like us are talking about, people of the same faith. And, I haven't, I guess because like it finally did that, I guess I'm more exposed to that. And so I've actually never seen the divisivity, the divisiveness, I guess.
Yeah, divisiveness.
Of this show between Catholics. It's interesting to see, and just, I'm amazed by just how much this show, I guess that's why, I wanted to have this topic, but yeah, interesting.
Because it's very familiar to me.
Please keep listening to us, by the way. If we watch a show and you're not a fan of the show, don't worry. We won't bring this show up on any other podcast.
We just lost half of our listeners.
We just lost oh, man.
Bye, Mom. I'm sorry.
No.
There we go. We have only 3 left.
Yeah.
Yeah. It reminds me of the time when the Harry Potter stuff came out. Because there was, in my Catholic homeschooling circle, there was so many parents when that came out. It was like, no way, my kids aren't listening to that. That is witchcraft. That's Satan trying to get a hold of you. And, my mom, trying to be a good Catholic person, is going to listen to what this loud, majority is saying, and how.
Same with my mom.
It was your mom?
Oh, yeah. My mom at first, I think she was like, yeah, I think she said that. But then she was like, I think she just saw through it. Eventually, she was like, all right, it's harmless. You know what I mean?
My mom went to go see it, I think, with my brother, John. Okay. And like that was early on when it first came out, because my brother read the book because my cousins were reading them, and they're Greek Orthodox, and they were reading it, and they would read it in Greek and all this stuff. And my mom went to go see it, and she was like against it. And then when she came back, she's like, yeah, I don't see the problem here. And then of course, that was before the series. You didn't know what the conclusion was. You didn't know what the big things were happening. So there were so many good Christian allegories going on in this book. And it's always, talking about love, sacrifice, the value of friendship, what evil actually looks like. And there's all these things that I think can coexist with our Catholic faith. Sure. But just because it was witchcraft and people were bringing out quotes from the Bible to back their thing. And that's a difficult thing that, what we're talking about right now is that there are going to be so many quotes from the Bible that are going to be against like a lot of things. And what happens is you have people also like, well, this quote's from the Bible. And that's where it gets dangerous, because it starts dividing us as a community of Catholic individuals. So it is a good, and you've seen it on your Facebook page too. You have tons of people that are into it, and people are like, oh, there's apparently some kind of show going on tonight. What's going on? And like, they're kind of just tongue in cheek, kind of bad mouth.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting dilemma that we find ourselves in as Catholics. And there's got to be a way that we can take control and ownership of something, even if it has some bad elements in it. And if you're watching it, and you got to think about, why are you watching it? Like, that's, to me, the big part of it. And I don't know. I've seen articles about, how this, Game of Thrones is basically pornography, right? I think
Yeah.
there was one, and there
I've
is
seen
good
those, yep.
there is good reason for that concern.
Sure.
Anyone that's seen a couple episodes knows exactly, how this is portrayed. Again, this is for those that don't know, it's an HBO show. You should know it by now. It's a science fiction fantasy thing, about kind of medieval stuff with dragons and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But the problem is, the books are written that way too, where it is some adult material in there. And the show, which makes it worse for me in the show, is that it's actually showing it visually, and sometimes it's not even that necessary.
And they don't hold back either. You know what I mean? Half the time.
Yeah. How do you as a Catholic, especially in your relatively new marriage? I mean, you guys have been married shortly. Like, how do you balance that? And has it changed since you've been married? Like, how you've seen that show?
I don't know, Derek. It's so tough to talk about this topic. Without being so divisive about it. Without angering people or triggering people, I guess is the new word. Because honestly, I think it does go back to, why are you watching this show? Are you watching it for specifically that? Or are you watching it, because it's got a good story and it's, and the characters are interesting. And for us, it's like, we watch my wife watches the show. We watch the show together. It's like our Sunday night kind of, ritual. We're like, all right, Sunday night, Game of Thrones night. And when it's interesting, because I come from a lot of backgrounds, right? I have my Catholic background, which influenced and to show, I guess, what they think is art. And for us, it's like, we don't watch it for that. And anytime those scenes come on, there's this great thing called the fast forward button.
Underutilized.
Underutilized. It's like, you can't, just skip the chapter, or there's such thing as, muting it and looking away or turning off the TV or something. You know what I mean? It's like, there's so many things like that. There's also different tools for us to use to combat that. But at the same time, people are going to be like, okay, so why do you watch the show if it has those scenes? Well, it goes back, we're watching this show because we like the show and we like the story, and we're watching it for the morality of these characters and, how, hopefully courageous they can be. I think there's a lot of lessons to take out of these kind of shows. But I think the one question is, as a whole, as a whole of entertainment, and I wrote this in my notes, is does my relationship with Jesus inform my choice of entertainment, or does it not? And for us, it does. It does. It definitely does. But there's a super gray line between what's good for the soul and what's not good for the soul. And certain scenes in that show are not good for the soul. And I think that's what. Sure. And that's why we don't watch House of Cards anymore, or that's why I don't watch House of Cards anymore, because I realize that show isn't good for me. There's no, I don't know. Have you seen House of Cards before?
I started watching it.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm 2 episodes
okay.
in.
So I won't say any spoilers, but the first season was great, right? You saw a lot of good storytelling and a lot of good morality, questions on morality in that show. But at a certain point, the show, at a certain point, and you can keep watching, don't take my word for it, but at a certain point, the show has no more forgiving qualities anymore. The show has no more redemptive qualities anymore. And it just ends up being the spectacle of darkness, a spectacle of evil, a spectacle of things that are not good for you. And I'm just like, why am I watching this still?
Yeah.
And certainly Game of Thrones hasn't been that yet. It still has redemptive qualities. It still has good questions of morality and good things to talk about, with your wife, or good things to talk about with your fellow peers and friends. But at the same time, it does have, a certain aspect of darkness, a certain aspect of evil in that show too. So yeah, no, there's definitely like a gray line and or a fine line of watching these things. How do you feel about?
It's one of those difficult topics because a lot of people, our listeners, probably there might be some people that love House of Cards, and they're like, oh, what, you're criticizing what? But that's the thing. Like, we're going to be criticized for enjoying some of these, these other shows too. And I'm sure you have your reasons, and you might see some kind of redemptive quality, or it brought up a discussion. Like, you might be against those things, and you discuss with a coworker about why it's wrong. Like, you actually know what's going on in there, where you can discuss, like, based on like Catholic faith, this is wrong because of these reasons. You still watch it, but you can use it as a teaching lesson. So I mean, when we were looking for like a next show to watch, and I've never been big on comedies that much.
Okay.
So we started watching, what was it called?
Netflix?
Yeah.
Kimmy?
No, but I can't even think of the name. I'll go to the
Kimmy
other
Schmidt,
one.
or no?
The comedy with, what is it? Michael Cera as a younger kid.
Ooh, what is that?
And Will Arnett's in it. Oh my gosh.
Oh no, I don't know.
Oh my gosh, the listeners know what that is.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's comedy. I can't think of the name because the point is we stopped watching it after the first season. Once we start getting into the second season, it turned more into like sexual innuendos, and it's like the jokes were built around some of these, and I started losing interest where I was like, I don't want to go through this, kind of, and again, there's certain preferences that people are going to enjoy, like certain elements of comedy. And it was one that I wasn't finding effective in my life. So I'm like, I need to cut it out because it's bothering me more than I'm enjoying it. So I need to cut that out. We started watching Orange is the New Black. A while ago, we watched, I think, 1 or 2 episodes.
Okay.
And immediately we were like, Facebook friends, who has seen the show? And is it something it's going to keep going like this, or does it clear up? And they're like, stop watching it now. And these were people that, we feel like have a good sense of what's going on morality wise and what we kind of align with. So we stopped initially right after, like that kind of discussion. Yeah. Because again, you don't want to be subjecting yourself. That doesn't have, is the redemptive quality strong enough to okay all the bad stuff that happened? And I think that's what it comes down to, because with Game of Thrones now that it's almost over as a season, those elements of nastiness and these characters growing, it's changed where all of a sudden you see these redemptive arcs coming in. You're seeing elements of sacrifice. You're seeing elements of honor. You're seeing elements of tradition being put into play. You're also seeing very clearly what is evil.
Yep.
Sure. And it's the grayness that used to be over in the beginning, it's starting to go away, where you're starting to see very clearly, okay, I see how they've developed into an antagonist, or you get to see how they're developing into a protagonist. And there is so much intrigue with the politics of it, just with all like the past history of this sci-fi kind of world. And also it's a show that we don't know how it ends. So we don't know what the final message is going to be, which is an interesting thing to be a part of, that we see Harry Potter in retrospect, where it's like, wow, that there was a lot of great Christian allegories going on within that series. Whether it was intended or not, it still came out very strongly, and it made me feel stronger about certain elements of sin, about just heroics in general. And like, it made me just miss a lot of the things of growing up, like in a brotherhood, like being at a Catholic college. Like, it reminded me so much of that stuff, of having this unity, and it was cool to relive that. And it is a great question, is like, do any of these things bring you closer to Christ? And I mean, I don't know if you saw it on Twitter just the other day. I think it was a Steubenville conference. Did you see the heat that some of the priests were getting?
Is it the dancing thing?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad you saw that. That's interesting, and so like, wow. Like, my wife and I had like a heavy conversation about, like, not even a heavy conversation. We kind of rolled our eyes. We're like totally on the side of just like the priest and the Steubenville. Because
Matt Walsh just recently had something too, is like kind of this idea of like, is it bringing you closer to God? And it was like, they're like saying, well, does sports bring you closer to God, or does this? And there are elements that these things should make us feel more optimistic about our life. Like, there is something like, it might not bring you to, like, football is so amazing, I have to go to church and pray about it, but it should be like, you're glorifying the human body in the way you can perform, and if it gives you unity with your family, there's certain things that you can attach to saying like, this is pulling me closer to God because it's making me happy, and God wants us to be happy. He wants us to be happy in a holy way. Like if we're addicted to pornography and we feel like that's an unhealthy relationship, because one, it's like dragging you away from your spouse. So there's like certain things with that. But the dancing priest thing, for those that don't know, these priests were on film at the Steubenville conference, and they were having a dance off, and they were really good. And it was the backlash that they got, especially on social media, like priests shouldn't be doing this, they shouldn't be dancing. And I immediately thought of Saint Teresa of Avila's quote, like, God save us from these, somber, kind of like sorrowful, uninspiring saints kind of thing, and that is a good point. Like these priests, I mean, I don't know what your guys, because we haven't talked about it, but I feel like this happiness that you can project that you're happy as a priest, and it's not like they're doing anything wrong, in my opinion. They're showing that some of these guys could bust a move, and apparently as a kid they might have had dancing things. And how awesome and surprising is it to see these priests actually in a way like inspire kids, like, wow, like that might be something that's holding back young people from joining the priesthood. Like, you can't have fun anymore. Yeah, like I can't use any of my talents.
Right. The one thing that comes to me is like when I was younger, I thought priests were set apart and you couldn't touch them, you couldn't high five them, you couldn't do like anything with them. You couldn't even like, they were on the altar and that's it. That was your only like exposure to them. Yeah. I never saw, like when I was a kid, I never saw a priest smile. Like maybe I just don't remember, but I never saw a priest smile. And so I never thought that priests were like humans technically. But when I got to college, that completely changed because I was exposed to priests. I was hanging out with priests. I was like, playing sports with priests. It was awesome. And for the first time, I was like, wow, priests are just like these normal human beings. Like, that they can have fun, and they can be joyous, and they can have laughter and all these things. And, for us, like when I saw that video, I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like, how cool is it to see like the person that gives, that celebrates the mass for you, also be a human being and just do the same things that you do and, be a role model. It's not like these priests were leading these kids to sin, they were showing so much joy and something as, simple as dancing. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of it too. It's like, you have to balance. I think you need some of this balance in your life of just like, this is something that is entertaining and fun, and it helps maybe even elevate your spiritual life because these endorphins and all this, chemical that you're happier, and like that can lead into a closer relationship with God. And going back to kind of like the movie thing, it's like there are, like we said, there are bad things in Game of Thrones. There's no denying that. And to us, like I'm the one in charge of the remote control for those shows where I'm like, I'm fast forwarding this. Like, I'm just going to take it upon me to guide the morality for this show because I introduced my wife to it. I'm going to want her to be still interested in it.
By the way, by the way, I was going to say, by the way, on that show, those are some of like the most, well, first of all, they're unnecessary. Like, we both agree with that. But also, there's some of the most like story-wise, or some of the most boring scenes that happen in the show. Like, keep the train moving. It's like, those are like stops on the well, on the thing, and you're just like, keep the train moving, keep going,
Well, and that last night's episode, there's that moment where they're hinting at something, and then thank goodness the pirates are here, and now we have a fighting scene to transition out of this.
Right.
So and I don't think you can completely knock something because it has something negative in it.
Sure.
Because there's a great game that you can play. I don't know if we're gonna have time for any of it now, but it's called Is This Bible or Game of Thrones? And as many of us know, the Bible has some very interesting stories in it. Sure. Let's just put it as that, where it's sometimes hard to tell which, like, are you serious? That's in the Bible? And they do get explicit. There's the stories within the book of Judges about, the guy getting his head nailed to the floor. And, there's all these weird stories of these, just Game of Thrones-esque kind of stuff in the Bible, but it doesn't. The difference is the Bible does help lead us to salvation. We get to hear the inspired word of God through this. And some of these nasty things that are in the Bible don't make up the whole of the Bible. It's just something that's going to express what's happening in the times, and there's a message somehow attached to it. And I mean, any of the listeners, if you ever have time, because we want to keep this, we're going to try to keep this under an hour. But if you want to have a fun time of just like kind of a tongue-in-cheek kind of exercise. Look up Bible versus Game of Thrones quotes.
I have to check
like
that out. I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, like here, can I do one right now?
Sure.
Let's do one right now.
Sure. If you bring it up. Well, my last thought before
go ahead.
My last thought is just, I think what Derek alluded to earlier and what I alluded to earlier is just, we're Catholic and we understand, what's wrong from right sometimes, and we understand, that sometimes shows have an ambiguity about them. And I think one of the things you have to do as a Catholic, and your responsibility, is to form your conscience. And so when we're watching these shows, especially Derek and I, like, a lot of the times our conscience, like, there's something bothering us about this show. I don't know what I think you said Orange is the New Black, or for me it was House of Cards, or it was what's the Aziz Ansari one? Like, a lot of people like that show, but I think it's too dark for me, and like they've got like a lot of like things that aren't that great about the show. But at the same time, it's like Game of Thrones, and I'll say this, is like, form your conscience. Like, if your conscience is telling you not to watch a show, if you have a really good formed conscience and it's telling you not to watch a show, don't watch a show. If you can't block out, a lot of these things, don't watch a show. For us, like, especially for my wife and I, like, anytime those scenes come up, we're just like, all right, time to fast forward or time to look away. Because in the end, like, there's something about those shows that can help, they can help you, they can teach you about morality or heroics or being courageous. And don't get me wrong, the Bible can teach you those things better, and, going to the sacraments is way better than watching any show, so that's kind of like my last thoughts too.
I mean, and the comedy also is Arrested Development. That's the one I couldn't think of.
Okay.
Where it's just, and I agree with everything that you were saying, is that us as Catholics, we're called to go out into the world, and we're called to just be a great witness to Christ, and to know God, to love him, and to serve him. We have an opportunity to know God through what he's taught us, and we also interact with the world. And if we can be that witness of, like, inspiring, especially younger people, there's a lot of young people that watch these shows, to tell them, just fast forward the scenes. It's to get you out of this temptation spot. There's enough good stuff in that show, which is interesting, that you don't need some of that garbage in there. And we can't look at our lives and say, like, I need bad stuff is happening in my life, so it's not worth living at all. Like, no, you got to get through some of these difficult things. And if your conscience, like you're saying, is really bugging you, God is putting something in your heart saying, this is right. And so you might need to cut something out of your life that is dragging you down. And I know plenty of people that watch many shows, and they were able to help guide me. They're like, it's not worth it, because, it never resolves this certain issue, and it kind of celebrates it. I will take a lot of people's responses to that and say, like, I trust your guidance, and, maybe that's an area I'm weak in, that I can avoid that part. And I thank you for actually watching it and knowing. And, I appreciate Christ going out to, all these people, as in, going out and spending time with prostitutes, not engaging in or supporting any of their lifestyle, but saying, like, you need to change or turn away from sin.
Yeah, calling them to better life, right?
Yeah, and everybody that, like, tax collectors, there's all these people, these lower morality figures that he was able to redirect. And if we can also help with that, like, look, like, here's a show that has some difficult stuff in it, but, as dads, we're fast forwarding that part. We're also giving a good example to our wife, is like, look, we respect what's going on in our relationship, so we don't need to see someone else doing that. And really just celebrating those kind of fun and entertaining moments. Like, man, we're going to get to see a dragon shot with, like, this scorpion pike thing. Like, that's amazing. And those are some fun elements to it. So if we can, especially not go after our other fellow Catholics, that they might be, like, they might say they're watching the show, but they might be very, particular in the way they're viewing it, where it's like, I don't want to watch any of those scenes. I'm making sure I'm getting rid of that thing. And we can't really judge those people. Like, when I hear someone's watching House of Cards. I can't think that they're the worst Catholics ever because I don't know how they are moderating their life. I'm trusting that they're doing the best to honor God, and that's the way I'm going to view them. I'm really glad to hear your response to that show because I've been thinking about seeing it and I'm questioning it, so that's really good that these conversations are, these are good to just help support and grow our community of men. So yeah, I appreciate your thoughts on that.
Sure.
Again, our viewers, like, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Oh,
you watch
yeah,
the show.
Definitely.
Is there something that, made you stop watching the show? Is there something that brought you back to it? Again, this season, there's just really interesting Christian allegories going on too with the Hound and this redemptive arc and like being a non-believer to be like, I'm curious to see how these things play out. Now, by the end, I might feel like I'm like, okay, that was a waste of my time. I should go to confession for it.
Definitely.
Like, like for the whole thing. But right. There's this hope of like, good might triumph here.
Right.
We don't know what's happening in George R. R. Martin's life. We don't know what's happening. Like maybe they've had a conversion thing that is going to show through in film about like turning away from the sinful. And the fingers always crossed and the prayers always being said for these people.
Sure.
But yeah, those are my final thoughts. Did you have anything else to kind of add to that?
No, I think I've said all. I mean, I think that prayer should always come first. And, I think we need to be praying about these things. Are these things good for my soul, or are these things, just good for me in general? But just remember, like, does my relationship with Jesus inform my choice of entertainment or not? Like, first of all, we have to have a relationship with Jesus to even be informed to pick things that we want to expose ourselves to, right? Like, if we're not having our prayer life down, if the TV is getting in the way of us praying, then we need to reevaluate what we're doing. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm not a saint, so yeah, like, has the TV gotten in my way of praying? Of course it has. Has the TV gotten in the way of me spending time with my kids? Of course it has. Has the TV gotten in the way of spending time with my wife? Yeah, it definitely has. But these are things that I'm always taking to prayer, that I'm always looking back on and saying, okay, I could have been a greater dad here, or I could have been a greater husband here, not only in terms of what I'm watching, but the time I'm spending watching these things. So that's kind of my last thing I'll say.
Yeah, I agree. Like, if you haven't even thought of those things, maybe it's time to start, everybody that's listening, just to be aware of what you're doing in your interactions with, like, whether you disagree with us or not on this topic. It's always great. Self-reflection is always a great thing 100%. To just step back and look at how am I judging too hard? Am I spending too much time doing this? And our lives, like, there might be something that happens in this season where it's like, you know what? I'm done. Like this, to me, it's just not worth it anymore.
Jon Snow
like,
dying again. You know what? I'm done.
Yeah, and like if like if there's something there's always interesting stories being told in these mediums that we're seeing, like all the movies and stories and film, and hopefully there's stuff like, to us, we were brought a little bit closer to our faith, or just really appreciate our faith more when we saw a movie like Wonder Woman.
Sure.
And that's a great way to like look at it in a different light. And that's what I pray for, like all of our listeners too, is that whatever they're consuming is somehow like they're looking through their Catholic lens and saying, like, is this drawing me closer to a relationship with God, my family, and my children? If it's not, if this is a detriment, we need to get rid of this right away. And as far as we're going, my family, I don't feel like this show is a detriment, especially the way that we're handling it right now and the way we're discussing it. But when that comes up, this kind of conversation, like, we're holding ourselves accountable for it. And I do like that, where it's like, maybe this is too much. Maybe we should step back. I like that we have a community where you and I can feel comfortable enough just sharing what we're going through, because, 100%. People are going to just totally disagree. Like, yeah. But at the same time, I want them to just look at, there's certain aspects in life, and just to make sure, like, they're not being hypocritical of things, because I know that so many people are putting a lot of emphasis on their spiritual life, and they are taking control of it. And I'm like so happy. I know certain people that do it the same way that we're doing, like moderating what you're seeing and closing your eyes for scenes, the good old fashioned way, like these are incredible people that are doing this. So keep that up, and just know that there's other people, other Catholic dads out there doing the same thing. Just because it's on TV, it doesn't mean we have to watch every second of it. And so just keep watching the stuff that's bringing you closer to God, and just really making you enjoy your life more fully, and not in a negative, like, sinful way. But yeah, thanks, John, for sharing this topic. That was good. I think this is good. Any other things before we go to announcements and shout outs?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay.
How about you?
Any announcements in general?
I don't know. Do we have any announcements, Derek?
I don't think so. The patience for people, because it's been a busy week for us.
Yeah.
this episode getting out later. It's
Yeah.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Thank
you. I'd just like to give a shout out to my wife, just being very patient with these last couple of weeks with these work camps. And she's been a fantastic example to my children of how to be a supportive wife and just a great partner and just working together. And, I really appreciate that because this has been a very draining time for me, like physically, spiritually, it's been very good, but it's just run me down a little bit. So I really 100%. Appreciate just everything that she's been doing.
Shout out to, anyone who's been listening to the show. Honestly, like, thank you for taking time out of your week to listen to the show. Hopefully we're getting better. Hopefully. And we have our Bad Catholic Dads Squared podcast going, our other podcast, our second podcast on this channel. So check that out. We just did a review on the new Wonder Woman movie and the new Spider-Man movie, Homecoming, that came out. So check it out. Check that out because my wife was on last week and
it was such fun. A good surprise.
I listened to it, by the way. I finally listened to that part. I was like, oh, it was good. It was very good.
My wife was surprised too. She had no idea that was coming up at all either. So she was like,
awesome. It was a nice surprise.
She said that Fatima did a great job. Okay, she would be worried about doing
that's
it.
Awesome.
But
we got to get the wives on. I don't know. Like dude, what would you think of next week? Seriously, having both the wives on. Would your wife be down for that? Bethany, would you be down for that right now? Say yes or no in the future.
You guys can pick the topic.
No, the topic. I already have the topic because you know what this week is. It's not only Shark Week. Do you know what this week is as well?
I would thought it was only Shark Week.
No, it's not.
Something else?
It's NFP Week, Derek.
Is it really?
It is NFP Week. What a great topic for our wives to do, though.
Wow, that would be like the first on-air interaction is a topic like that. That's a
heavy one, but I'd rather let my wife handle it.
Possibly really awkward conversation.
Hey, you know what's funny? Like when we first started this podcast, your wife sent me a bunch of topics, and one of them was NFP. So there you go.
Yeah. There you go. Well, we'll see how she responds.
Let me know what she says about that. If not, you'll never see an NFP episode by us. My other shout out is on the Bad Catholic Dads Squared Books, Catholic Books Cinema Digital. We had a review. I said it, but I want to say it on here just in case you don't listen to that other podcast. It says "Keep It Up" by Anon Leo 90. It was last week. He says 5 stars. He or she says, I think it's a he. 5-star review says, "I'm not even Catholic. I have a Protestant background. I have Protestant backgrounds, but hearing this makes me think, and it's a good refresher. Keep up the good work. You've grown so much from high school." Appreciate that. Thank you so much for your review. My question is, that was our 9th review. Who's going to be our special 10th reviewer? So
who's going to be the number 10?
Come on, number 10. Really... We need it by next week. Let's go.
Any prayer requests, John?
Please pray for my new job. I have to go in tomorrow to sign my contract and meet the principal and everything. So announcement.
Oh yeah. Hey.
I got a job. So remember last week's episode, or was that last week, Derek? Yeah, that was last week's the Trusting in God episode. Literally the next day after the Trusting in God episode, I got a call from I'm working, I think I could say it now. I'm working at a Catholic school, Catholic high school, teaching religion. So I'm super excited about that. But they called me back the very next day, offered me the job, and I go in tomorrow to sign my contract and meet everyone there. So I'm super excited about that.
To be clear, though, this is the one that mentioned Bad Catholic Dads.
This is the one that mentioned Bad Catholic Dads. That is correct.
I mean, I think that's awesome.
That's super awesome.
That is such an incredible story. Yeah. I think just for this podcast in general.
Yeah.
Like, just that we had that episode and the next day, like, I got the text from you, like, Derek, and it was like exclamation points and like, I got the job. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Thank you for your prayers. Is God,
you know?
Yeah, seriously.
God must have been listening to our podcast.
Seriously. Thank you for your prayers and everyone and support and everything. So.
My prayer request is for our little baby Isaac. He's going to the doctor tomorrow. He's had these eye problems going on where it's like the eye, like, not to be gross, but the eye goop stuff, and it has not cleared up. So we already had like a prescription thing for it, did not work, so we're going back. It's just, and he's been really whiny lately, so we're just kind of, a little bit concerned for, just that everything should be fine, but it's just that little concern for the little guy.
Sure, definitely.
Please, like John said, leave us a review. We're looking for that number 10 review.
Yep.
You can find us. What locations, John?
You can find us on the iOS app, the iOS podcast app, on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. YouTube, when we get to it, I have to post them on our Google Drive for Derek to post them up. But also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Email us. This was such a good episode. Please email us if you have any a follow-up to what we've said on this podcast. You can email us at badcatholicdads@gmail.com. We'd love to start a conversation with you. Maybe next week we just regroup and see what the response was to this episode. If not,
if the NFP idea doesn't really take off,
if it doesn't, we'll just
how your response.
We'll have a response. We'll definitely have a response episode if you guys want us to. And then of course, please support Bad Catholic Dads on Patreon. Your support helps this podcast keep going, but also helps us kind of fund everything. It's not cheap at all. I have no problem saying that. But please support us, patreon.com/badcatholicdads. Please pray about it.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we are looking forward to seeing you next week.
All right. Peace.